Welcome back to another episode of Zoned In. I believe this is episode number 3, your guys' favorite MMA podcast to listen to whilst you're doing other things. This is essentially your background noise. Now, today's podcast, I want to go over UFC 322 a little bit. That's the big card coming up, I believe, on November the 15th. That's the Madison Square Garden card, usually at this time of year. And I know this podcast is a little bit late. I want to apologize for that. I've just been kind of busy. So this is a little bit of a later one than usual, but I'm still trying to pump one out every single week for you guys. But let's go over this card here. So JDM versus Islam Makhachev, the main event. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not generally someone who enjoys seeing people move up a division and get an immediate title shot without fighting someone else first. Now, someone might counter that with, why would you have someone relinquish their belt, move up a division to take on a contender to maybe get a title shot? Well, that's the whole idea. You wouldn't unless the weight cut was just too hard for you and you wanted to move up a division. Now, I understand if you're someone like a GSP, 9 title defenses or something like that, and you're extremely dominant, okay, we can make the exception. I think you need to have at least a few title defenses before we can have the conversation of you moving up. Now, Islam has got 4 title defenses, so at least there is some sort of argument to be made that he's deserving to move up to 170 pounds to get a title shot, right? But for instance, Ilia Topuria, someone who had fought at lightweight once against Jai Herbert and almost got knocked out. He basically beats Alexander Volkanovski for the belt. He then beats Max Holloway. Then he moves up to 155 pounds and fights Charles Oliveira for the lightweight belt. I don't agree with that personally. I think he should have fought someone like an Arman Tsarukyan or a Justin Gaethje, someone first. Now, I think Ilia would have won no matter who it was, but that's not the point. I think that worthy number 1 contenders should be a top contender before getting a title shot. Or at least someone who is credible before you get your title shot. I think that's fair. But in this case, Islam fighting JDM is quite an interesting fight because I think a lot of people are kind of writing off JDM on this one, and I wouldn't do that. I think that JDM is the better boxer of the two. I think he's definitely better when it comes to switching stances, better footwork overall. Islam does trip over his feet at times. Islam's definitely the better grappler. I don't even think we need to question that. But JDM is absolutely working with Craig Jones, and probably Alexander Volkanovski, who has shared the octagon with Islam Makhachev twice, is going to absolutely be able to give him some insight, and I think that JDM is going to come extremely prepared. My prediction on this fight is essentially that I think this fight is going to be very competitive. I think it's going to be very close. And I think it's going to be extremely controversial. By the end of it, we are not going to really fully know who won this fight. I think it's going to be so close. It's going to be a round or two up in the air for debate. And we're probably going to debate for a long time who won this fight. That's how I see this fight going down. And the only thing I'm concerned about for Islam is that this is his first fight at welterweight. He's put on some size for this fight. And I'm not going to lie, bro's looking big. How is that going to affect his cardio going to the later rounds? Is he going to be slower? Is he going to be more stiff? Now, these questions, they're going to be answered on fight night. And this is why I wish that fighters would also take a fight before just fighting for the belt. Because you need time to get used to fighting and being in a real fighting situation. Not just sparring, but a real fight with that added size and with that added weight. It should be interesting overall. I don't think that Islam's going to come out there out of shape or anything like that. I think he's going to come prepared to fight. I think him and JDM are going to be roughly a similar size, and I think this is going to be a great fight. I genuinely am very, very excited for this one. This is going to determine, is Islam truly number 1 pound for pound? Because the whole idea of pound for pound that I think a lot of people tend to miss a lot of times is if everybody was the same weight, who would win these fights? And I think that Islam Makhachev definitely has a case right now for being number 1, but I think it's Ilia because he's done the whole becoming a champion in 2 weight divisions. So if Islam beats JDM, then we're going to have that conversation about who is truly the number 1 pound for pound fighter. And when you're talking pound for pound, I think how you win is extremely important. If Islam Makhachev just dominates JDM from pillar to post, then yeah, he's probably going to be number 1. If it's tit for tat, extremely close, it could have went to JDM, but Islam just gets a win by split decision, then no, he's not going to take over as number 1 pound for pound. That's just in all fairness. But there is something else to talk about on this card, right? The women's super fight. This is the only women's fight that I'm looking at and going, this is actually going to be exciting. Valentina Shevchenko is taking on Zhang Weili for the flyweight title. This is one of these fights where actually I don't mind Zhang Weili just getting an immediate title shot because one, let's be honest with ourselves, women's MMA is dead. It is just dead. There is one other fight besides this where I'm that'd be a good fight, and that's Amanda Nunes versus Kayla Harrison. Outside of that, I don't care to see it. If the UFC came out and said, we're going to cut the whole women's MMA stuff. Is anybody going to care? Is anybody going to be shedding tears? I don't think they would. But this fight is an extremely good fight. Valentina is a bit older in age, and Zhang Weili, I believe, is a bit up there in age too, but not as much as someone like Valentina Shevchenko. And Valentina hasn't really improved her game very much throughout the course of the years. It's kind of just stagnated. It's very much the same. She kind of comes out with the same bounce at her step each and every fight, the same sort of stance. She only really moves in like forward and backward motions. She's not the best when it comes to her lateral footwork. She's really good with her takedowns from the clinch. We'll see if she's able to overpower Zhang Weili, similar to how she was able to Jessica Andrade. But I think that Zhang Weili is a much better fighter than Jessica Andrade, so this should be a very, very good fight. The highest level women's fight probably ever, if I'm going to be honest. There's a part of me that thinks Valentina should win, but then there's another part of me that's like, Zhang Weili is definitely more skilled. It's just a matter if the weight's going to be an issue. I kind of have to pick Zhang Weili based off the whole skill aspect, but if Valentina wins, it's probably most likely going to be due to the brute strength and size, overpowering Zhang Weili. There's going to be a lot of grappling in this fight. Don't expect this to be like an absolute war from pillar to post. This fight does have the potential to be a little bit boring, but at least there's going to be like a lot of skill involved with it. So, this is a very good fight. Moving on to the number 1 welterweight contender fight, at least in my eyes. We got the number 2 Sean Brady taking on the number 8 ranked Michael Morales, who's coming off a win against Gilbert Burns. And I'm going to be honest, I'm not super high on Michael Morales, to be honest. Yes, he beat Gilbert Burns. That was a very old and washed version of Gilbert, who literally did not wrestle until he was already rocked. It was absolutely crazy. And Gilbert Burns had a couple moments of success in there. So I am interested to see how does he handle the pressure and the pace of Sean Brady, because Sean Brady right now is on a roll. He's coming off that whole Leon Edwards win. Absolutely dominated him too. And I think if Sean Brady wins this fight, he absolutely deserves the next title shot and should absolutely be facing the winner of JDM versus Islam, at least in my opinion. And I think Sean Brady can absolutely beat JDM or Islam as well. I think that Islam's probably a bit of an easier fight for him, mostly due to the striking. But I can absolutely see where, they're both very tough fights for Sean Brady. I don't know if he wins either one of them, to be honest. But it's kind of up for debate. And as for Michael Morales, I don't see him beating Islam Makhachev. But the thing is with Michael Morales, his takedown defense is relatively unknown. We don't know how he's going to look against a high-level grappler in Sean Brady. And we don't know how he's going to look when someone actually puts pressure and pace. Because a lot of times these prospects who are up and coming, they look extremely good against fighters who do not really do a whole lot. They kind of stand in front of you all frozen. They don't want to throw anything. They don't want to get caught by the power, and the aura and the mystique of a young, hungry, up-and-coming prospect gets the better of some of these fighters. Sean Brady's not going to wilt under that sort of pressure, I don't think. Now, I'm not saying Michael Morales can't win this fight. I'm just not favoring him because that's not logical. Yes, he could knock out Sean Brady. It's possible. But the problem is, I don't like to take bets like this based on the chance that Michael Morales could land that shot. I like to take bets based on overall skill and what I see within people and what I see the most likely thing to happen. And the most likely thing to happen in my eyes is Sean Brady being able to take down Michael Morales, control him on the ground, and win a decision. That's the most likely thing because we haven't seen Michael Morales fight a high-level wrestler yet. I'm not saying he can't defend the takedowns. If I knew he had amazing takedown defense, it was impeccable, yes, I would favor him to win this fight. But we just don't know. So I can't pick him off of something that we don't know about. So yes, I do have to pick Sean Brady on this one. Now, I don't want to get like too much into the analysis part of it because I am going to make a video breaking down these fights and everything. But Leon Edwards versus Carlos Prates, I'm just going to say this right now. This is going to be a tough fight for Leon in my eyes, right? I know people are saying he should be able to win. But here's the thing. He's not a good enough wrestler to take down Carlos. Not in my opinion, at least. Like, I know that Ian Gary was taking him down at specific points, but that was more when he was gassed out or whenever Carlos would overextend on his punches. Leon Edwards is not the best wrestler in the world. Sometimes he'll shoot ill-advised takedowns from a distance, and it just does not look very good. He's better with his takedowns from the clinch. He's not going to take down Carlos Prates from the clinch. He's a Muay Thai fighter. He's not going to be able to get taken down. His balance is extremely good. And I think that Carlos Prates has the height and reach advantage, I believe. Or, I don't know about height. I know he has the reach advantage. I don't know about height. Height is pretty similar. But I think the power advantage is going to be on the side of Carlos Prates. And the thing is with someone like Leon Edwards is he generally does not do well against fighters who are very high pressure, pace, and volume. Now, Carlos Prates isn't really that. He's not really like volume and pace and amazing cardio and all that. He does gas out. He gassed out against Ian Gary while barely throwing punches. Like, his cardio's not great. The alcohol and cigarettes certainly are not helping him, but Leon Edwards does really well when guys move back and they're extremely patient. When you play that patience tit for tat, kind of point fighting game, Leon's going to win that most of the time. You got to put pressure, volume, and pace. And I do think that Carlos Prates will eventually land the shot to hurt Leon. Because here's the thing. Leon got rocked by Nate Diaz by a big left hand. Now, you can argue that Leon didn't see the punch coming. He was throwing his own check hook, or a big wide hook, I should say. As that punch was coming in, he might not have seen it. It's possible, because it's the shot you don't see coming that hurts the most. But if Carlos lands that left hand the way that Nate Diaz did, Leon's going out. And right now, I just don't have a lot of confidence in Leon. I think he's technically the more skilled striker, but the thing is, right now, he's stagnated in his skill. People thought of him as this knockout artist because he knocked out Kamaru Usman with a head kick. That narrative has never been true. Throughout the course of his entire career, he's always been that sniper point fighter, and if he's going to knock you out, he's just going to land a Hail Mary shot like he did against Usman. But for the most part, he's extremely patient, technical, will poke at you from a distance, and outpoint you to a decision. That's what he usually does. And I don't know if it's going to work when you're playing that range game against Carlos Prates, when the power is so devastating and such a huge threat. I should pick Leon off the basis of skill. It's just that right now, I just don't know if I can pick him, because he's on a 2-fight loss streak. His confidence seems to be very low, and Carlos Prates is coming off a big banging win over Jeff Neal. So, I should pick Leon. I just don't know if I can right now. I don't know if I have confidence in him to win. And lastly, Beneil Dariush taking on Benoit Saint-Denis. This is going to be a good test to see where BSD's grappling's at. I do think that Beneil Dariush is a better grappler. BSD's more of a bulldog. He tries to bulldog his way through you, but Beneil does have power in his hands, so BSD needs to be extremely careful. He needs to mind his P's and Q's throughout the course of this entire fight. I am riding with Beneil on this one, but BSD does have a good amount of power in his hands as well, so I could see him rocking Beneil at some point in the fight, but yeah, I'm rocking with Beneil Dariush on this one. And something I want to point out on this card, and I don't want to say I'm glad about it, because it makes me sound like a bit of a hater, but I'm going to be honest, I'm very glad that Bo Nickel is not on the main card of this fight. I think people are starting to realize that Bo Nickel people just don't like the guy. And I think it's because a lot of people see him as cocky and arrogant, when I don't necessarily, I see what they're saying, but the reason why he's like that is because he has confidence in himself and that he believes that he's the best in the world. To be a fighter and being willing to fight in a cage, you have to believe you're the best. Otherwise, you're going to go in there and get smashed to bits. So I understand why Bo Nickel thinks the way that he does about things. And Rodolfo Vieira should be a very good test for him. I can't wait to see the fight, but I want to see how his wrestling skills translate, because Bo Nickel's wrestling hasn't done the best so far. He's had a hard time getting takedowns against not so great fighters. I'm just not so high on him right now. Then you got guys like Roman Coppola versus Gregory Rodriguez. That's a banging fight waiting to happen. I cannot wait for that. Erin Blanchfield versus Tracy Cortez. That's a good fight. I think if Erin Blanchfield wins that, she's probably going to get... I don't know. I don't know if she'll get the next title shot. I think she'll probably have to fight Natalia Silva for the #1 contender. That's what I would think that they should do. Malcolm Wellmaker, probably one of the best prospects right now in the sport. And then even the early prelims of this fight are looking not too shabby, to say the least. Kyle Dawkins versus Gerald Mearshart, GM3 on the early prelims. This card's looking absolutely amazing. I cannot wait for this. So let me know what you guys think of this card down in the comments. But we got some questions and some opinions on here today. So I'm going to go through the opinions section of this first. Starting off with Z-B66. Opinion. Eye poke should have never been allowed in the first place. Yeah, I agree. I don't know if there was ever a rule saying that you were allowed to eye poke, but yeah, I can absolutely... I think that's fair, and I think if you're talking about just I think that referees should enforce this a lot more. I think that they need to do more point deductions, purse reductions, disqualifications. They need more of that, because it'll incentivize fighters to close their knuckles like this as opposed to this. Now, I understand doing this is a way to keep your range and everything. I get it, but you can also just do it like this. Keep your hand kind of closed, but be able to keep that range, right? So, I don't want to be too harsh on fighters for this, but eye pokes have got to stop, but they're never going to stop. That's kind of part of the issue that we're seeing here. Next up, one on Ilya Taporia from Eldon John-YT. Ilya is not as good as everyone says he is. Not saying he's bad by any means, but while 2 of his last 3 wins are overrated. Volk was coming off 2 losses, with one being a brutal TKO loss, and he's past his prime. Charles past his prime, Max past his prime, or just exited his prime, and Ilya was getting outboxed by Max by a small margin, to be precise, until he stunned Max. In my opinion, Ilya is overrated. Why have Ilya #1 pound for pound? I don't think he's overrated. I think that some fighters' fans can be extremely obnoxious at times, but I do need to correct you on something, right? So first of all, Volk was not coming off 2 losses, right? Because you have to remember, he fought Islam, very close fight, lost. Then he fought Yair Rodriguez, beat him, dominated him. Then he lost the rematch to Islam Makhachev, first round knockout, then went into the Ilya fight. So you could say he lost 2 out of his last 3. It's only a small correction. I see the point you're saying, but Volkanovski's the one who wanted to make that quick turnaround, so we can't really blame Ilya for that. And Volk was still the champion at the time. Now, saying that Charles is out of his prime, I'm going to be honest, like, I see where people would get that notion from because of the fact that he was 35 at the time, but we had no evidence to suggest that Charles Oliveira was not a capable fighter. I mean, he just came off dominating Michael Chandler for 5 rounds. Like, he 49-46'd him relatively easily, too, might I add. Had a very close fight with Arman Saryuki before that, where a lot of people, including myself, think that Charles Oliveira did win that fight, right? So there's no reason to say he was washed. Max being past his prime, I think I could see the argument as well for this one more than the first 2 in a sense. I think that it doesn't matter what version of Volkanovski you got. I think Ilya would have won regardless. Same thing with Charles Oliveira. Max Holloway, I think, should have stayed at 155. Going back down to 145 after the Justin Gaethje fight, I think kind of left him a bit compromised. I think his chin wasn't the same, his gas tank wasn't the same. He probably just wasn't as good of a fighter there. Moving up to 155, it should be very interesting. And also, the thing is, Max kind of changed his style after that third Volkanovski fight, where he used to be so forward, just constant volume, pace, and pressure, where then he kind of became... He knew he had good cardio, so he kind of became a bit more of an outside fighter, where he was able to just move around constantly, blitz in quickly, and get out of range, right? Like, look what he did in that third Dustin Poirier fight. Look what he did against Justin Gaethje, even against Ilia Topuria, where he was having a lot of success, even though 2 of the judges gave him the first 2 rounds, which I thought it was 1-1, but whatever, it is what it is. But I don't think Ilya's overrated, though. But I can kind of see the notion on why people might think that. Moving on to a boy 1134. If Islam beats JDM, he becomes the GOAT of the sport. 16-fight win streak with wins over all-time greats and has a decent resume. Now, right now, I have Islam at the number 7-8 spot. Somewhere in there. No, I did not purposely say 6-7. Or purposely try to avoid saying 6-7. No. I have him at number 7, number 8-ish. And saying 16-fight win streak, but against who? The win streak itself, yeah, that's cool. But if you fight a bunch of nobodies and, you know, it's just a bunch of easy fights, it means nothing to me. With wins over all-time greats, yeah, beating Charles Oliveira, absolute legend of the sport. Beat Volkanovski twice, once on short notice, but the first fight, absolutely amazing. A pretty good win over a good version of Dustin Poirier. Not the best version, but a good version of Dustin Poirier. But having a decent resume is not good enough to be the GOAT. I think if he beats JDM, I'll probably have about number 5, number 6, somewhere in there. But not the GOAT, no. GSP and DJ still clear, to be honest, at least in my opinion. And moving on to the questions. Starting off with the first question, or I guess it's more of a statement. Top 15 GOAT list. So I actually have a video coming up soon, as soon as I can figure this out, of my top 10 GOATs. So in no particular order, because I actually haven't figured this one out yet. I can tell you my top 10 for sure. GSP, DJ, Jose Aldo, Barab Dvalishvili, Alexander Volkanovski, Alex Pereira, Daniel Cormier, Kamaru Usman, Fedor Emelianenko, and Khabib Nurmagomedov. So I actually don't know. I was supposed to put Islam in here somewhere, I believe. Islam Makhachev's in the conversation as well. I know that guys like Stipe were very close, Alexander Pantoja, and if you want to pick one more fighter, maybe like a Max Holloway or something. But those are like my 15, in no particular order necessarily. But I do need to adjust this and tweak this. You know, I want to make sure it's perfect before I release my official top 10 list in order. But that's the general list for my top 15. At least in my eyes, right? I mean, it's tricky. It is kind of tricky. But moving on to the next question here. From Awan-WM9FT. If you could have one new gen fighter versus old gen, only one fight, who would it be? Oh, man. Okay. I don't know what... Okay, well, I'm just going to go with it. I think the one fight I'd pick is GSP versus Khabib, right? I think you have to do it. Right, you have to. Like, GSP in my eyes is the greatest fighter of all time. Khabib Nurmagomedov is probably a top 3 greatest fighter to walk the planet, and not in terms of resume, but just in terms of like capabilities inside the octagon and skills and everything. I think Khabib's top 3 all time in terms of skill, or at least like maybe not well-rounded skill, but just what skills they had to work with. Yeah, Khabib's got to be top 3. I think that that's a really good pick there, to be honest with you. Or some people might pick Anderson versus GSP. I don't care too much about that fight, to be honest. I think GSP wins. I think his wrestling's just too strong. But yeah, that would definitely be my pick. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Would you guys have picked anything different? I really don't know. It's a bit of a tricky one. Next one, going to Relentless Sonam.T. Thinley. If one MMA prospect who has under 5 fights in the UFC or any other organization has the potential to be the greatest of all time, who do you think it could be? This is kind of tricky because prospects are very hit or miss. I don't like to jump on hype trains straight off the hop. Probably Alexander Topuria, to be honest with you, though, if I had to pick one, just because, like, when you talk about fighters who have under 5 fights in the UFC, there's not a ton of them to pick from where I'm like, yeah, this guy's a future contender for sure. Alexander Topuria, absolutely has the potential to be a top contender. Training with his brother Ilya, number 1 pound for pound. I just think that that family's just got some crazy mentality, crazy genes. It's got to be him, right? It's got to be. If not him, I don't even know who else you could pick, to be honest. Moving on to the last question of the podcast. Is Izzy the GOAT of middleweight? Yes, and I'm going to tell you why. A lot of people like to write off Israel Adesanya, and I don't really think that's fair. I think he's a fantastic fighter. In his prime, he was absolutely amazing. But also, I don't count people who've tested positive for PEDs. And I know some people are going to say, oh, well, the whole boob thing, whatever. I don't have any proof to say that he took anything, so it's kind of unfair to say, to be honest. But if you take a look at his resume, throughout the course of his MMA career, he's beat Marvin Vettori twice, Brad Tavares, Derek Brunson, Anderson Silva, Kelvin Gastelum, Robert Whittaker twice, Yoel Romero, Paulo Costa, Jared Cannonier, and Alex Pereira. That is a very solid resume. 2-time middleweight champion as well, might I add. In my eyes, like, there's no one over him in terms of accomplishments, except for Anderson, but I don't count PED users, so it's got to be him, right? If not him, who else? But guys, this has been episode 3 of Zone Day. And if you guys enjoyed, make sure to leave a thumbs up, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys later. If you guys want to leave questions, leave them down in the comments below, or I'll post something on the community tab, and I'll see you guys later. I hope you all have an amazing day. Peace!